Hello, I'm Reyer Gerlagh, Professor of Environmental Economics at Tilburg University. I frequently use computer models for my research. After COVID-19 emerged as a pandemic, I read many articles and I thought about the models describing the spread of the virus. I'd like to share my summary of those models. I am not an epidemiologist or a virologist. My description has not been tested by fellow scientists and is mainly a summary of my own understanding. I hope my explanations are of help if you want to understand what is going on. This is the third video in the series. How do we tackle the COVID-19 virus? There are three options. We can try to eradicate the disease in our countries, we can try to suppress the disease, or we can try to achieve herd immunity. Eradicating the disease seems impossible for most open countries like in Europe, because infections are easily entering unnoticed from abroad. Not everyone is aware that he or she carries the virus. Therefore, here we compare only the last two options. We wonder how long suppression might be needed and how much it will cost. Then we compare that with the herd immunity alternative. If we suppress COVID-19, that means we aim for only a few patients. We have to wait for a medicine or a vaccine to arrive before we can live normally again. That will take at least a year, so the experts say. How much does it cost to suppress COVID-19? We have no experience with an economy that keeps a social distance all the time, so it's difficult to calculate. The costs of the lockdowns in various countries so far are very large. Estimates of costs are expressed in trillions of euros or above 5% of GDP. The costs of suppression are lower than those of the lockdown because some shops and companies can open again. We also gain experience with remote contact economy. We can learn to work smarter with fewer contacts. Still, the cost will be some percentage of our GDP. To fix ideas, I assume a loss of 3% of GDP for suppression alone. That is, not counting the lockdown costs. Now we look at the option to achieve herd immunity. How does that work? For this, we need the reproduction factor R from the previous videos. We have shown that the R depends on the number of people carrying the virus without them knowing it, times the number of contact moments they have, times the chance that the virus is transmitted per contact. We now add a factor of S to this, the chance that the person you are in contact with is not immune. If we multiply the four factors, we calculate the R. If everyone is immune, S is naught, and the virus is not transmitted. Then we find R is naught. We can find the group immunity by calculating backwards. It goes like this. During the lockdown, you had to stay at home if you had to sneeze. That was important to reduce the number of people who go outside with the virus. We want to be less strict. Then the proportion of people who carry the virus that goes out increases, possibly to 90%. In the formula then, we set A is 0.9. We also want to be more relaxed with washing hands and keeping a distance. The chance of contamination per contact moment increases again. In our formula, we use the same P as before the lockdown. P is 3%. And we want to get back to work and meet friends. In the formula, we then have N as 100 contact moments. If no one is immune, this means a reproduction R of 2.7. Then we're almost at the old situation before the lockdown. But if 60% of the people are immune, that reduces the number of infections by a factor of 0.4. That is the S we need in the formula. It brings down the R to 0.98, just under 1. That's okay. It means that if 60% of people are immune, we have achieved group immunity. If you find this going fast, don't worry. Press the pause button and do yourself the calculations. We are not sure of the probability of death if you become infected, but there is an estimate that says the probability of death after infection is the same as your normal probability of death in an ordinary year without COVID-19. That makes easy math. For a typical country, each year about 1% of all people die. If all people in the country are infected in 2020, there will be twice as many deaths. That is, mortality increases to 2% of the population. If 60% of the people are infected, in order to achieve herd immunity, there are 60% extra deaths. That is, mortality increases from 1 to 1.6% during a year. Now we have enough data to make a comparison. What do we prefer to do? Suppress COVID-19 with an economic cost of 3% of GDP, or achieve herd immunity with 0.6% of the people dying? Obviously, we have to be careful with the comparison. There are more things we don't know than we do know about the costs for both options. The suppression strategy cannot prevent all death, and herd immunity has also economic costs, as we cannot do without interventions. Add to that the understanding that lost years of life are a better measure of the mortality cost than the number of deaths. The average person who dies from COVID-19 is old and frail, but may have had more than 1 year to live. And perhaps smarter combination strategies are possible. Yet an economist seeks such calculations nonetheless, as they reveal the magnitude of consequences of the choices that our representatives in government have to make. This was the third presentation of the series. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it helps you understand COVID-19 better. As a scientist, I add a disclaimer. I am Professor of Environmental Economics. I am not an epidemiologist. I have read a lot of medical literature about COVID-19, but if you find I made mistakes, please let me know. Thank you.